And good evening and welcome to CNN's continuing coverage, America's New War. I'm Donna Kelly, and for the next 2 hours, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories, your hopes, your fears, your questions, and tears are certainly okay at this time. We want to hear about the loved ones that maybe you've lost or you're still looking for, and the heroes that you may have met along the way. And then at the bottom of the hour, we'll talk about possible U.S. retaliation. NATO's former Supreme Allied Commander, General Wesley Clark, will be taking your questions. Then at 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, we'll ask, how safe are you? A terrorism expert will be joining us from London. And then at 1:30 Eastern, what do you tell your children? A child psychologist will take your questions. So grab a pencil. Tell us your stories. Tell us about maybe the person that you've lost or who's missing because of Tuesday's savage attacks. The number to call that we want to give you right now, whether you're in the United States or anywhere around the world, is 1-404-221-1855. Again, that number is 1-404-221-1855. First, the latest developments for you. And for that, we turn to Jim Clancy and Colleen McEdwards. Jim and Colleen?
Thanks so much, Donna. We look forward to all of that. But we do want to begin with a new development for you. Searchers have recovered the cockpit voice recorder from the hijacked plane that crashed in western Pennsylvania.
Authorities are saying that this device was found 25 feet below ground in a crater made by the impact. The recorder has been sent to Washington for analysis. An FBI spokesman says it appears to be in his words, fairly good shape. Searchers had already recovered the flight data recorder from that plane and the two recorders from the jetliner that targeted the Pentagon. Well, turning now to other developments, law enforcement authorities say that they have made their first arrest in this investigation of the week's terrorist attacks. The person in custody is described as a material witness, and CNN's Mike Betcher has more on the investigation.
4,000 special agents chasing 36,000 leads and circulating to 18,000 law enforcement agencies a growing list of people they want to question.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation has also forwarded a list of more than 100 names to numerous law enforcement organizations. These are the names of individuals the FBI would like to talk to because we believe they may have information that could be helpful to the investigation.
Another FBI list, this one made public. The 19 men who the FBI says were the hijackers of the 4 aircraft. 7 of the men were pilots, according to CNN terrorism analyst Peter Bergen. 13 of them have recognizable Saudi tribal names from the west and southwest of Saudi Arabia, an area where bin Laden has recruited.
According to a source familiar with the bin Laden organization, men returning from Afghanistan who had trained with bin Laden arrived in Saudi Arabia in recent weeks and were talking about some kind of big operation that was imminent.
The FBI searched this apartment in San Diego, where in those final stages, Monday before the attack, 3 men left town in a hurry.
They had the truck right here that was moving out. Did that seem like you were leaving anywhere? I mean, I never seen nobody move at midnight.
The trail of another accused hijacker, Mohammed Atta, in the months before the attack, led from Hamburg, Germany, to Florida and a series of flight schools, rental car agencies, and apartments. Then back to Hamburg, a return to Florida, and a final trip to New England, where he boarded a Boston to Los Angeles flight that eventually crashed into the World Trade Center. U.S. intelligence sources tell CNN the entire terrorist operation required so many people and special skills that they believe several terrorist groups had to be involved. Egyptian Islamic Jihad, led by this man, Ayman Zawahiri, a close bin Laden associate, is one of the groups getting close scrutiny by U.S. analysts. They were photographed together about 3 years ago in Afghanistan. A second man who has not been seen in more than 20 years is also being scrutinized. Imad Mughniya, who is suspected by U.S. officials of masterminding a string of terrorism attacks against Americans, including the 1983 suicide bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut that killed 241, has had numerous contacts with bin Laden since 1994, including face-to-face contact in the Sudan at an Islamic conference. This, according to Western and Mideast intelligence sources. A founding member of Lebanese Hezbollah, Mughniya is believed living in Iran. U.S. officials remain convinced that bin Laden was behind Tuesday's attack, but believe the day's mega-terrorism marked the debut of a new, larger, and more dangerous organization, a group with many heads and many faces. Mike Betcher, CNN, Atlanta.
Well, he had seen the pictures on TV just like the rest of the world. He'd heard detailed reports from the mayor and the governor as well. But George W. Bush, the commander-in-chief, got his first look at Ground Zero in New York City Friday. John King reports.
A first-hand look at the worst of the devastation and a pep talk that included a promise to those pulling the dead from the rubble.
I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
After his emotional tour of New York, Mr. Bush was asked if he knew who was responsible.
We know we got a suspect.
But lead suspect Osama bin Laden is an elusive target, and aides say one of the president's greatest challenges is convincing an angry nation to be patient.
This conflict was begun on the timing and terms of others. It will end in a way and at an hour of our choosing.
Mr. Bush declared a national emergency and authorized a call-up of the National Guard and reservists. And Congress passed a resolution authorizing the president to use all necessary and appropriate force to retaliate. Senior officials say they do not rule out a first wave of military strikes in the near future. But Mr. Bush is asking his national security team and other world leaders to develop a long-range plan. For example, sources tell CNN the president is asking the leaders of Canada, France, Germany, Britain, and other nations to do more to break up terrorist cells in their countries, and asking Saudi Arabia and other moderate Arab nations to crack down on bin Laden's financial supporters and to take a tougher line with the Taliban in Afghanistan.
In our response, we will have to take into account not only the perpetrators, but those who provide haven, support, inspiration, financial, and other assets to the perpetrators.
Mr. Bush also led the nation in a day of prayer and remembrance, with former presidents, the cabinet, and the Congress joining in.
Grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness, remembrance, and love have no end. And the Lord of life holds all who die and all who mourn.
Consoling the nation is another role for a president at times of crisis, and a father who knows the strains of the job well gave his son a supportive tap.
Administration sources say weekend national security meetings will focus on options for responding, and senior officials tell CNN they enter those talks with one encouraging development. Pakistan, which borders Afghanistan, has now promised to fully cooperate in any U.S. operations. John King, CNN, the White House.
As people around the world mourn those killed in the terror attacks, more light is being shed on the lives of the victims. Here's a look at some of those who were lost.
Lost on United Flight 93 from Newark, headed to San Francisco. Mark Bingham, a rugby player and owner of a PR firm. He ran with the Bulls this summer in Pamplona. Alan Bevan had taken a year's sabbatical from environmental law. He was on his way to Bombay to work as a volunteer. Thomas Burnett was the COO of a medical research company. He reached his wife, Dina, by cell phone. When she told him about the other 3 downed planes, Burnett vowed he and his fellow passengers would fight back against the hijackers. United Flight 93 crashed into a Pennsylvania field at 10:20 a.m., September 11th, 2001.
The victims of the terrorist attack came from many walks of life. Barbara Olson was a 45-year-old lawyer and a conservative commentator on CNN. She was aboard the plane that targeted the Pentagon. Just before the attack, she made 2 telephone calls to her husband, U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson.
I think she must have been partially in shock from the fact that she was on a hijacked plane. She absorbed the information. We then both reassured one another this plane was still up in the air, this plane was still flying, and this was going to come out okay. I told her it's going to come out okay. She told me it was going to come out okay. She said, "I love you."
Well, memorial services were held across the world Friday to remember all the victims. In the United States, an official day of prayer and remembrance brought people by the thousands to churches, synagogues, mosques, and public squares. President George W. Bush and former Presidents George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter were among those joined together in grief at a service at the National Cathedral in Washington. And on the West Coast, a wall of flickering flames. Just a look at it now as thousands gather in downtown Seattle, Washington to remember many in the city working for Boeing, maker of all 4 planes commandeered by the hijackers on Tuesday.
Definitely hundreds of people.
Now inland to Las Vegas, where the city known for its glitz and neon marked the National Day of Prayer and Remembrance by dimming lights on casinos. That happened at 10:45 Eastern Time. And there you see it. Well, we're going to have another news update later this hour. I want to go back over to Donna. Now though, Donna.
All right, Colleen and Jim, thanks very much for the latest there. As we carry on, as we told you, our first half hour now, we are going to concentrate on wanting to hear your story. And our first caller this evening from California, and Terry. Terry, hi.
Hello.
Go right ahead. You're on the air.
Oh, I just wanted to say that my heart goes out to all of the people in New York. I mean, there's no words that can explain how I'm feeling. Like I said, there's just no words. It's very hard. I'm an American citizen, but I'm Muslim, and I feel the tragedy double because, I mean, you know, my child, myself, all the safety. I had a sense of security here, and now I'm afraid.
I was going to ask you, are you afraid, and how old is your child, and have you had anybody say anything or do anything threatening to you?
No, everything's been really good here. You know, I thank God for that. Everything has been really, really good here. Nobody has said anything out of the ordinary. It's just the fear that it may happen, and I think that's what scares me most, because you don't know what to expect. You're always looking over your shoulder. And my son's 4. He doesn't really know anything. So, I mean, I'm happy about that because I can shield him.
And there is a hotline that folks would like to call if there are problems, and we'll try and get that for you and have that sometime during the program as well. Let's go on to William, who's in California. William? William, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
You bet. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll make it brief. I know a lot of people want to talk, so I just wanted to say that out on Beach Boulevard here in Huntington Beach, there are so many people out right now with flags and candles, and every single car on both sides of the street that are going by are honking their horns, and it's just a tremendous sight. And I rode my bike down there to check it out, and I didn't want to leave. It's amazing, actually.
I gave a thumbs up and a wave to a few folks here in the Atlanta area, too, as I was driving in. There were folks with candles and flags waving those on some of the street corners as well. Past a church that was doing 24 hours. They were open for people to come in and have some prayers, and this church had communion and prayers as well. People around the United States, in fact, around the world, certainly memorializing a lot of the folks. You know, we still don't even have all the final numbers of the victims. We want to know, certainly as we carry on, though, how the news of the terror attacks is affecting you. And we do have another call. I'm sorry, David from where? Florida.
Orlando.
Hi, David. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm from Orlando, Florida. I'd just like to give a prayer out. Of course, my prayers go out to all the firefighters and all the the medical personnel assisting in the rescue mission to get our survivors out of there if there are any. But I also want to give a prayer out all to our Arab Americans who have taken up root in this country. I just don't want the same mistake that was made a half a century ago when Pearl Harbor was hit and we wrongfully imprisoned Japanese Americans. I hear a lot of violent acts being taken upon our American Arab friends here in America. I just don't want to reduce ourselves to the same atrocities that